Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday, June 15th, 10 a.m. Eastern, and I am really excited to be on here with you all live talking about the renal function panel. So, in this live this morning, we're going to dive into the stuff that I get a lot of questions about, and there's only so much I can answer when it comes to the labs, but I hope that I'll be able to provide you with a lot of information in this video, in this live today. So I want to make sure that my settings are all good to go, and it looks like we're set. So for those of us jumping in, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are coming in from to watch live. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Jen Hernandez. I am a renal dietitian. I am the founder of Plant Powered Kidneys, and our practice is all about a plant-based diet. And for those of you that have been watching or learning from me for these past couple years, plant-based means a whole variety of things. It's not one diet fits everybody. So we talk about the foundation of your kidney-friendly or kidney-supportive diet being about plants, including plants in the diet, which is very different from the old school renal diet. So I am really excited to be getting on and talking with you all today about the renal function panel. Again, this is live now, but the recording will be available. And if you do watch the recording, I'd love to hear if you are team live or team replay. It gives me some feedback on how I can better serve you. So let me know in the comments if you're live or replay so that we can see who is here. So first of all, I wanted to give you the link. This is the article that I'm basically covering today. I'll also be doing the video with James tonight covering this information. And, sometimes we can get a little tangential or talk about other questions. So that will be available tonight as well. So if you can't make this full thing tonight too. If you can make it today, that's okay. You don't need to worry about coming to tonight's chat because we're going to go through a lot of it today. So the article is at plantpoweredkidneys.com/renal-function-panel. And it is a lot of information. I know I won't be able to get to all of it. Like a lot of our articles, there's so much information. So hopefully you can check that out. There's also a few free downloads that I have recently put up on the website too from some of the recent articles. So be sure to check that out. All right. So first thing first, we are going to start by talking about preparing for your renal panel, preparing for your blood test. This is something that's really important to pay attention to, and you don't really want to walk into it blind necessarily. You want to understand really what's happening when you get a renal function panel. So it's not necessarily going to be everybody. The renal function panel is something that your doctor will order depending on maybe your other blood test results. It could also be ordered because of a family history, or you have other health conditions that could lead to kidney disease. So for example, high blood pressure, blood sugar issues or diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol, even obesity. If you have a little extra weight on you, that might be reason that your doctor would want to check your renal function to make sure everything is running smoothly. Good morning, Violet from New Jersey. All right, so we have the renal function panel compared to some other blood test results. Renal function panel isn't going to be the first one. There's a basic metabolic panel, there's comprehensive metabolic panel, there's of course your lipid panel, there's thyroid panel, all these different panels. And essentially what the panel means is it's a group of lab tests that gives us a good picture of whatever situation we're looking at, if it's a specialty or a certain area like the renal function, or if it's something like the basic metabolic, which is your general electrolytes. And we'll get a little bit into that today as well. So the other reason your doctor may order a renal function panel test is if you have symptoms that could suggest you have some kidney issues. So those kind of symptoms could be it could be something like swelling. So fluid imbalance might be happening that your doctor might say, we need to check your kidney function. Again, this isn't a guarantee that that's what will be checked, but it's a possibility that this could be something that your doctor orders. Also, if you have pain in your lower middle back where your kidneys are located, that could be something that your doctor says, well, we should probably check your kidneys and see how things are going related to that pain. And that may or may not say anything. Again, pain could be really more related to kidney stones, which may or may not show up on some of your lab tests. So, how long does it take to get those results? So, in general, the turnaround time is pretty quick. It's about 24 hours. However, many labs, many doctors do require the doctor to sign off on the labs before they are released to the patient or provided in any kind of portal or other type of access. So the actual result time is generally 24 hours. It's pretty quick because the blood can go bad in a sense, and the labs can be inaccurate. So it needs to be done pretty quickly, but the doctor may or may not be able to see all of it right away. So be patient. Your doctor is definitely keeping an eye on them. And if there's anything that would suggest a redraw or something went wrong, like the lab got messed up or something, it's not common, but it happens. So it might be a couple days before you actually see your results, but usually it's a pretty quick turnaround time. If your doctor's office has an electronic patient record for you or patient access, patient portal, that could be one of the quickest ways to see your blood test results if they're uploaded to the portal. And sometimes these different lab companies have access to directly import them in there. Doctor signs off and then they're accessible to you. I've had a lot of clients that they send me their lab results literally that 24 hours after, like once they got their results. So it can be pretty quick. So the type of sample. So what exactly is being used for the renal function panel? Well, this requires a blood sample. So you go to a phlebotomist, you go to somebody that will draw blood out of the veins in your arm, and they'll take some tubes of blood, and that is what they're testing. They're testing the blood and the nutrients and the waste that's found in your bloodstream. So that is the type of sample. It's a blood sample. Now, what about fasting? Do I need to fast before going to get my blood drawn? That depends. And it's a really good thing to check with your doctor, whichever doctor is ordering the test for you, to see if it's required or not. Generally, fasting is not required. The renal function panel itself doesn't need to be fasted, but you may want to notate for yourself, for your doctor, and when they draw your labs, they may even ask you, when's the last time you ate, so that they can mark if it's fasting or not. And fasting is generally about 8 to 12 hours before the lab draw. So personally, I would recommend, allergies. I would recommend, if you are told to fast, getting there first thing in the morning is going to be ideal because you're already fasting overnight when you're sleeping. Hopefully you're not eating throughout the night. So stopping that 8 to 12 hours before your appointment time. And then I also recommend for those fasting appointments, bring a snack with you. Bring something with you that you can eat right after your lab, because that's a long time to fast and deprive your body of nutrition, of good energy. So bring a good, smart snack with you. One of the articles that we have on plant-powered kidneys are a bunch of low sodium snacks, including the grab and go kind. So something like that could be a really great option for you to go to your appointment prepared and not feel too woozy afterwards. So let me check the comments here. Good morning, Robert from Missouri. Good morning, Stephanie. Good morning. Good morning. All right, so we've got some great people on here saying hello and good morning. All right, so the next question, what about the fasting affecting the results? Is that going to make a difference? Again, with the renal function panel itself, if you're following the guidelines that your doctor has given you for fasting, that 8 to 12 hours usually, that won't make an impact. But if you fast for an extra long time, if you fast beyond the 12 hours, that might make a change in your glucose levels. And I'll talk a little bit about glucose later on, but this can make one impact. Another side of things, if you're fasting and not staying hydrated, not drinking enough water, that can actually cause abnormalities in your sodium, your chloride levels, even your GFR, that glomerular filtration rate, which is what a lot of you I know really, really focus on, is that filtration rate. So if you're not staying hydrated, that can make your GFR look funky. So again, keep it in mind and check with your doctor when you are getting this renal function panel ordered, and they'll usually tell you, okay, I've got this down, you've got to go to the lab at some point, or you've got to make an appointment. Find out if you need to be fasting or not, and then also understanding your own fluid needs. Now, some people need to be on a fluid restriction, so it would be important to follow those guidelines, but if you're not on a fluid restriction, making sure that you're drinking plenty of water and staying hydrated. Okay, so hopefully that answers some of the basic questions. Next, I'm going to be getting into the details. This is where we get into those labs, the nitty-gritty stuff. So let me check the comments. Good morning, Carmen. And Robert says he's never been told to fast for renal blood draws. Excellent. That's exactly it, Robert. So the renal function panel itself won't require fasting. In some cases, your doctor may order another set of labs in addition to the renal function panel, and maybe that set of labs does require fasting. So they would say fast for that lab draw appointment. But if you're just getting a renal function panel, it's not necessary that you fast unless otherwise instructed by your prescribing doctor. And I think back to when I worked in dialysis. And for those of you that know my history, I worked in dialysis, for a few years from different places all over. And we would draw these labs every month. And it is not something, we were not encouraging people not to eat for their lab tests. In fact, we wanted them to continue to eat normally, because the more that you're eating that is a normal diet, what you're used to, the labs will mean more. If you try something different and funky, depending on the situation, it could make an alteration that you don't realize. So following your normal dietary habits during the lab draw is really, really great. Okay, so next we're talking about those details, getting into what exactly the renal function panel includes. So first up, we have our waste products. And one of those waste products is BUN. Now, if anybody knows what that stands for, you can kind of get ahead of it, but and put it in the comments if you want to be the spoiler. I'm okay with that. I do that too. So BUN is a waste product. This is something that is produced from our body, not just from what our body is making, but from what we're eating. It actually stands for blood urea nitrogen. And again, this is something that is natural. This is something that is normal to be found in the body. Therefore, the BUN levels in the renal function panel is generally below 20. In many cases, it can be higher though. And the reason is because this BUN is more so related to the diet, because it has to do with the measurement of protein that's being broken down in the body. So for example, people on dialysis require a much higher protein diet because of how much protein the dialysis treatment is taking out of their bodies. So because they are eating so much more protein, BUN on dialysis can be upwards of 75 or even higher for those on dialysis. And while BUN is, from my experience, routinely checked, it's not something routinely reviewed, because I'm sure if you saw a BUN of 75, if you're tracking your labs before dialysis and then you saw a BUN of 75, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what is happening? This is something that is an adjustment for dialysis. Dialysis. So we do expect this number to be higher because of the higher protein diet and this shift in expectations when it comes to somebody staying healthy. So while it doesn't seem like it would be right to be so high, it actually is. And when I worked in dialysis, if I saw somebody with a lower BUN towards that like 40 to 50 range or so, to me, that was showing that they're not eating enough. So that is pretty interesting to look at, but everybody's different. So maybe you do have a little bit lower of a BUN on dialysis. Definitely talk with your dialysis dietitian to better understand what's going on with your own lab test results, because they're going to look at not just one number, not just one lab. They're going to look at the big picture for you and really connect the dots to help you understand more so of what's going on. So why? Okay, let's see. Tyrone says, why would your BUN be low? So this could be related, as I mentioned, to one factor, could be not eating very much. It could be making changes in the plant-based diet. The BUN that I see for my clients, we're looking to keep it around the 20 range. But this is one of the labs I see change the most and the quickest when people go to a more plant-based diet. They're including plant proteins, but they're not including as many animal proteins anymore. And that drop in that animal protein tends to lead to a drop in BUN. And that could be a good thing. It might not be a good thing. This is a good question as far as why you want to work with your healthcare team to help you put all of the pieces together, because we can't just look at one lab. We can't even just look at one lab trend and assume we know what's going on, because there's so many other factors. And when I talk with my clients about their labs, when we see maybe the GFR comes down a little bit, and nobody's excited to see that, but we see other labs like their BUN came down, their creatinine stayed stable, their phosphorus came down in control, other labs improved. We're looking at other factors like that and really, again, getting a big picture of things, because a lab result is a blip on the radar. It's not going to stay. It will change. Even if you do your labs at 10 in the morning and then you got them drawn again at 10:05 or 10:10, it could look like a different set of labs, because your body is always changing and trying to readjust and shift things. So it's very, very fluid. So that's definitely something that you want to talk with your healthcare team about and find out what exactly is going on for you. And this is where, as a little side note, when we talk about, like, even in our Plant Powered Kidneys Facebook group, when people ask or talk about lab results, and I say we as in even myself included, we in the group cannot provide insight into those lab results because we don't know the full picture. Even if you tried to give us the whole story, it's impossible to get all of that across. So it's important to talk with the healthcare team that knows everything and that you participate in that and give them more information. That's who you're going to get really solid answers from as far as why something dropped really big or shot up or stayed the same. You want to talk with your healthcare team about that. All right, so next we have creatinine. Creatinine is another one of the waste products that the kidneys are responsible in managing and filtering and getting rid of. Now, creatinine, again, is a normal waste product. This is something that is naturally occurring just from our muscle metabolism. It's naturally occurring from our movements, from the muscles that are building and breaking down, and this is something that naturally happens. The problem that arises is, again, when the kidney function declines and it can't keep up with eliminating the creatinine, and it starts to build up. So typically creatinine levels are slightly different between men and women. For men, they look at their body structure. Men usually have more muscles than women do. Women have a higher fat amount to accommodate for reproduction. We need that fat for hormones and all kinds of things. So men have a slightly higher normal creatinine level, around 0.6 to 1.2, women 0.5 to 1.1. But gender, age, even your activity level. So some people have talked in the group about exercise, and I've had questions about weightlifting and things like that. That might make some adjustments to your creatinine, may or may not be significant. Again, talk with your healthcare team about what could be causing your numbers to look a little bit funky. All right, let me just check in on the chat again. Good morning, Sissy. Good to have you back. Miss Lorena, always good to see you here. And then Robert says, I'm in the lower range of stage 2, have bounced down into stage 2. How do I convince my doctor to give a referral to a dietitian? I've gone to a regular dietitian. Well, I will say regular dietitians do provide a ton of information, a ton of support. So in some cases, your doctor may just not have access to a renal dietitian. We are a very, very small fraction. There's over 106,000 dietitians in the United States, and there's only about, I think, last I checked, it was like 200 renal dietitians. And when I say renal, I mean board certified. Like I am board certified in renal nutrition. There are other dietitians that do focus on renal nutrition and they just don't have their board certification yet, or it's not something they're aiming for. You got to keep asking. But if you have a dietitian that you're seeing already, I would use that. I would use them. And I would be bringing this information, Robert, to that dietitian and providing them with, hey, I found this resource. I mean, you can definitely give them plant-powered kidneys as a resource and say, what do you think about Jen? And I connect with a lot of dietitians online in social media and even in networks for professional conferences and things. So I'm more than happy to connect with other dietitians and provide them with other resources that they have access to as a dietitian to learn more about kidney health. So if you're working with a regular dietitian, not certified in renal nutrition, you feel free to share what you find with them and open that communication, just like your other healthcare practitioners. Get the conversation going with asking questions about what's going on, asking for some more explanations on things that you don't understand. And okay, so then the other question, does protein intake affect creatinine level? Indirectly, there has been research to show that if you have a big amount of protein before labs, you'll have this blip in this increase in creatinine for a minute, and it may affect your creatinine long term depending on your regular diet. If you're eating a ton of protein. Research has proven, and I say proven because it comes from the KDIGO guidelines. These are international guidelines for caring for kidney health. They say a low protein diet is kidney protective for people not on dialysis in those mid to late stages. So protein is more so affecting that BUN. That's the big one. And it may affect your creatinine level over time, potentially even in a smaller immediate lab result. And Sissy, okay, Sissy's nephrologist said she asked for a renal dietitian. The doctor says she doesn't need one. And you don't agree with him, Sissy? I don't agree with him either. It is not the doctor's job to prevent you from getting nutritional care. And if you reference the KDIGO, just KDIGO, KDIGO guidelines, again, these are guidelines that nephrologists use to base their practice. The dialysis clinics use them to create their policies. They look at what these recommendations are, and they push this out into the renal community. So if you use, hopefully, if you use that term, it's kind of like insider term, right? You say, according to KDIGO guidelines, I should be seeing a dietitian, no matter my stage of kidney disease. KDIGO recommends everybody with kidney disease, no matter their stage, sees a dietitian. What do you think about that? And if they still say you don't need a dietitian, I'd be looking for another nephrologist because they are blocking your care. We have so many tools and resources, and I say this all the time, we have so many tools and resources to help you take care of your CKD. And the earlier you see somebody, the better chances you have of improving levels, of getting better and feeling better and avoiding symptoms. Sometimes that is what doctors are basing your treatment off of. If you're not symptomatic, you don't need to do anything about it. But that's not the case for nutrition, and they know diet is very important. So I would really, really encourage you all to push to see a dietitian. It doesn't have to be a renal dietitian. You guys have great resources here at Plant Powered Kidneys. You have the Facebook group, tons of resources that we can help you with. A dietitian is better than no dietitian. And again, renal dietitians, we are a needle in a haystack. I'm pushing to get more renal dietitians, I promise, but we are really working on that. And Miss Cheryl is absolutely wonderful. If you guys haven't seen some of her stories, happy to be back in stage 2. Oh, Cheryl, I am so proud of you and all the work that you have done. It has been absolutely an honor to see your growth and what you have been able to do, and the foods you've been able to get back into your diet. That is just absolutely heartwarming. It is my favorite thing when I can help somebody learn that they can eat more food on the renal diet. It is just absolutely heartwarming to me, and I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of all of you. The reason I point out Cheryl is because Cheryl and I have been connected for Cheryl, years now, right? I want to say it's been years, and it's been absolutely fantastic having you on board. So, okay, You guys know I can get kind of like sentimental about this stuff, and I will definitely get tangential, but I'm going to stay on track as best I can. So the next after creatinine, we are looking at the protein in the blood, which is your albumin. So albumin is a protein, and it's actually made by the liver. And with kidney disease, it may tend to go lower. The general, oh, my allergies, my nose is itching like crazy. The general levels to look at for albumin is 3.4 to 5. So this is the range that we're expecting. In dialysis, we would look at a albumin of 4. That would be the goal, to keep it at or above 4, because albumin is kind of like the internal Band-Aid. As our bodies get sick, as we're fighting chronic illness and inflammation, albumin is what is dispensed. It goes out into the body to work on healing. And so we'll see a lower albumin for someone that's sick, someone that's not feeling well. If you've ever been hospitalized, and if they should give you like a record of your labs. Labs get tested nearly every day in the hospital. If you look at your labs, I would say looking at that albumin is pretty interesting, because usually when I worked in the hospital, somebody would come in and they would be really sick and their albumin would show that it would be low. And as they healed, as they got better, many times we see this slight increase in their albumin levels. And that kind of correlates with how they're feeling, how they're eating. It's not necessarily related to the protein in the diet. Most times it's really an inflammatory marker. So the more inflammation you have, the lower your albumin gets. Hopefully that makes sense. But we look at albumin between 3.4 and 5. And this is something that is more of a clue as to there's something going on. We see the albumin going down or something. We're thinking, okay, what is causing this to happen? That's where it's really important to start diving in deeper, looking at things, talking with your doctor about what's going on with my albumin, what kind of inflammation, even something like obesity, type 2 diabetes, even if it's controlled, blood pressure issues, kidney disease. These are things that can cause albumin to drop because it creates an inflammatory response the body is working to fight. So keep your albumin in mind, but don't think because it's protein in the blood, it means it's protein in your diet. It's different. Okay, now we're getting into the electrolytes. So the first one that we have is sodium. Now, sodium is the most common thing in our blood outside of our cells, and it helps with muscle function. It helps with our acid-base balance. It helps with our cellular balance, even the osmotic, the pressure of our fluids in our body. And while a lot of people automatically think of sodium being related to the diet, it's really related to our fluids. So this is something where we look at fluid balance, making sure that you're getting enough fluids, maybe not too much. Generally, the normal amount for sodium levels is 135 to 145. And if it gets higher or lower out of this range, there's a lot of things that can happen, whether it's a change in medication for blood pressure, maybe increasing fluids, decreasing fluids. But again, it might be falsely low or falsely high if you're fasting, if you were fasting and not drinking enough water, or overcompensating and drinking too much water, that it could have diluted your sodium level. So it's really important to keep in mind that it's just a single number. It's not a tell-all of everything going on, but looking at the big picture, looking at that trend, and speaking with your doctor about what could be causing this. This is another thing. If they start talking to you about the diet and saying, oh, eat this, don't eat this, low sodium diet, like, well, if you're going to tell me that I should follow a certain diet, shouldn't I be seeing a dietitian? Shouldn't I be working with a dietitian to find out what diet's best for me? Hello, that's another argument to say you need a dietitian. And if they're saying you don't need one, but then they're giving you diet advice, that's kind of confusing, isn't it? So definitely another kind of gem to throw out there if they're starting to give you some recommendations. All right, so next we have potassium. Potassium is a pretty hot topic. It doesn't seem to really go away with the kidney community, but that's good because it is something to be talking about. It is something to learn and know about. So potassium is the third most abundant mineral in our bodies, and it is so important in helping with nerve conduction and with our cardiovascular system, including our heartbeat. It helps regulate how fast our heart is beating. One of the most common problems is cardiac arrest for having abnormal potassium levels, whether it's above or below. Either way, it could be problematic. And again, it's important to understand if you should be following a low potassium diet, find out why. It usually has to do with the labs with this number. Talk with your doctor again. This has to do with the diet. Talk with the doctor about seeing a dietitian to understand potassium and learn more about, learn more about what best fits your needs. Okay, staying hydrated. All right, if your labs are consistently above that 5, that could be a good reason to be looking into a lower potassium diet. And we have a really good article on plantpoweredkidneys.com about the low potassium diet that goes through a lot of the foods you can eat, things to pay attention to, things to limit, and really how to help balance that. So be sure to check out these articles on plantpoweredkidneys.com. I really like to have these articles come out every week for you guys for more information, more learning. All right, next we have bicarbonate. This is another one of my favorite ones. So your serum bicarbonate is also, you might see it as CO2 on your labs or carbon dioxide. And this is really related to the acid-base balance in the body. And the kidneys are really responsible to help with that acid-base balance. They are trying to make sure that we keep this neutral area where we have some acid, we have some base, because both of them serve very important parts, but we can't let one overrun the other. So our bicarbonate is related to base, and with kidney disease, we tend to go to the more acidic side. So while bicarbonate levels are typically between 20 and 29, even upwards of 32, I do see on some lab ranges that they go a little bit higher. They might be like 22 to 32 is another range that I've seen. It's my perspective, and the research shows that there are better outcomes for people that have the higher end of this range. So looking at the upper 20s. And this is something I tell my clients when we're looking at their labs is if their bicarbonate level is on the low side, this is going to potentially cause some unfortunate side effects, some nausea, vomiting, low appetite, just not feeling good because this balance is off. So if you have seen our chat, the live about PRAL, potential renal acid load, you can go to Plant Powered Kidneys and search PRAL. That is an absolute fantastic way to be able to get an idea of how to improve your bicarbonate levels through diet first. And again, this is a lab that is really closely related to the diet. So once again, if your bicarbonate levels aren't looking fantastic, maybe they're kind of trending towards the low side or they're trending down, this is another excellent opportunity to say, you know what, doctor, I know that bicarbonate is related to the diet, so maybe I should see that dietitian now. And we will talk about how to increase your bicarbonate levels safely that doesn't rock the boat in other areas. Some of the things that I know people talk about to kind of manage this. There's that whole thing about taking baking soda, which you guys, that's not the solution because it is so much salt. It's like half a day's worth of salt. It is not the solution to take baking soda unless your doctor has prescribed it. But even then, as a dietitian, I'm a really big believer in food first. So how can we look at ways to increase your bicarbonate through good food rather through some pretty just no. There are prescription medications that your doctor might recommend in order to help you with your bicarbonate levels. But again, it's prescription medication. So talk with your doctor about that. And again, if they're even looking at medication for this is such a good time. You guys, if I could get this across to you, this is such a great opportunity to work with a dietitian. Even if your lab isn't out of the range, this is a great time to be preventive and proactive and look to learn more about your renal diet. It's absolutely fantastic, a great time to focus on it. Let me check in on the chat really quick because we got a lot of great comments. So Pat says, can't find a renal dietitian in my area. Luckily, a lot of dietitians, myself included, do provide telehealth. So we meet just like this. I do video chat with my clients on a weekly or biweekly basis, and you may be able to find a dietitian that can do remote work with you. So for dietitians, we do have some licensure laws. We need to be licensed where you're at, and different states have different licensure laws. I myself have about, I think, like 10 different licenses for different states for where I see my clients. So you can check the National Kidney Foundation's dietitian directory. You can just Google renal dietitian and put your country or your state in. Maybe not necessarily your city, because that's a smaller area, but try searching more broad. Or if you find a dietitian that you like, connect with them directly and say, are you taking clients? Do you know someone who specializes in renal that you could recommend me to? We as a dietitian community, we're a small but mighty community, and we love referring to each other to support one another because we all have different specialties, and we like to focus on those specialties to really take care of that kind of stuff. And Cheryl, only 1 year. It seems like forever, but in a good way. In a good way, it seems like that's great. And you are definitely a great motivator for others to see those kind of results. I know Robert sees that as well. And really quick about the question from Therese about collagen powder and protein shakes. I don't recommend either. The only time I recommend those are for people on dialysis. Again, when they have much higher protein needs. People not on dialysis shouldn't be taking protein supplements. Again, low protein diet. So Therese, the low protein diet article on the website on plantpoweredkidneys.com is probably going to be a really good resource for you to read up on. Let's see. Let me see. How else we go? Oh, we have some good questions. Okay, I'll try to get to some of these others before we wrap up, but I don't have too much more time left, and I have a lot. As you guys know, the articles that we have are pretty intensive, so we have a lot to get to, and I'm going to get through as much as I can with the time that I have left. So next we have chloride, and chloride is a mineral that an electrolyte that helps with your fluid balance. And this is something that we look at, and not many people focus on it because we don't really think too much about it, but it's really important, again, when we're looking at fluids and how much to drink, and even that question about salt in the diet, that we look at chloride as well. So chloride is between 98 to 107, and having numbers outside of this range could suggest many different things. It's not an automatic assumption that it can definitely be one thing. So you want to talk with your healthcare team about the potentials of why your numbers are looking funky, if they are. So it could be a result of diabetes. It could even be a result of some lung diseases. So chloride can be abnormal for many reasons. Don't let your head get too carried away with what it could be. Talk with your healthcare team about what it should be related to. Next, we have phosphorus. And I did have a question about phosphorus that I'll get to here in a bit. Phosphorus is a mineral that is found in our body, and it's stored in our bones. It's actually really, it's a good friend of calcium. So where calcium goes, phosphorus follows. And this is something that I teach a lot in Plant Powered Kidneys in our 6-week course, as well as with private clients. And I taught a lot of this in dialysis because phosphorus is one of the hardest things to control. In general, phosphorus levels are between 2.5 and 4.5. In dialysis, phosphorus is up to 5, but phosphorus, again, is quite hard for people to manage on dialysis. So we're trying, and when I say we talk about the dietitians in dialysis, the dialysis community. We're focusing on trying to get those numbers down to that goal, that normal range, to help protect bones, because the higher it gets, the harder it is on your bones. And this is where a high phosphorus can cause problems like calciphylaxis, which is a hardening of the soft tissue. So think of like your blood vessels. Blood vessels are meant to expand and contract. They're meant to move to help control your blood pressure. And if you need to have an increase in blood pressure, it'll contract. If you need to have a lower blood pressure, it'll relax to let more blood through, and it's easier. But with high phosphorus, that phosphorus starts settling in the blood vessel, settling on it, and it hardens it, literally like turning it to stone. And then it can't contract, it can't expand the way it needs to, which makes it harder for blood pressure control. I've had a lot of sad stories with high phosphorus levels from a lot of patients in dialysis who had wounds that wouldn't heal because their phosphorus was uncontrolled, amputations because of high phosphorus. It basically caused this calciphylaxis that just broke down the body, and it's really, really hard to see. So there's several articles on plantpoweredkidneys.com. We talk about the low phosphorus diet. We also talk about phosphorus binders, which are a very, very common prescribed medication to help control phosphorus if it can't be managed just with diet alone. But I'll tell you what, a plant-based diet is a great way to help manage phosphorus, at least get it started. So Daniela asked, what about increasing phosphorus? So this isn't a common problem, but it might be the case. And honestly, when I see a low phosphorus, kind of like that low BUN in dialysis, what it tells me is they're not eating enough. And this goes to this fear of food with kidney disease. And this goes to a lot of those foods to avoid handouts that you see those handouts, and you can comment if you've seen that, because I know there are so many out there, heavily Xeroxed, dated from 1991, just very outdated. But for some reason, it just used to be seen as this will help people. Just tell them what not to eat. But then it turns into, well, what do I eat? What am I supposed to eat? Now I know all the stuff that I can't have, but what should I have? And many times that leads to people restricting so many foods in their diet that they don't eat enough. If you're sick and you're not eating well, you might have a low phosphorus level because you're not getting enough even natural phosphorus. So, okay, Danielle, you said hi. Okay. So, okay, well, I'll finish this really quick because it is something, again, not very common. Low phosphorus is very uncommon. I would see it in my really sick patients, the ones that just maybe nursing homes, not eating well. And in that case, we say, you know what, eat whatever you want. Like, it doesn't matter because your phosphorus is low and we've got to make sure you're getting enough nutrition in. But for high phosphorus, Daniela, I would really recommend that you check out the low phosphorus diet article on plantpoweredkidneys.com. We have a whole article that talks about phosphorus. We have a section that talks about the foods that are high in phosphorus, and we have a section that talks about foods that are low in phosphorus. And it really comes to focusing on more of your day-to-day diet, looking like the foods that are in the low phosphorus diet, which, hint, hint, comes from plants. So that would be a great way to start. Talk with your doctor also about other things that might be causing your phosphorus to be high, because it might not just be related to the diet. It can be related to other health factors that are in your own medical history. So talk with your doctor. And again, this is another opportunity to say to your doctor, it sounds like I would really benefit from a dietitian who could help tell me what I should be doing to help control my phosphorus. So there's another opportunity for you there to help encourage your doctor to give that recommendation. And another thing too, if your doctor's open to it, give them my information and say, you know what, maybe you just want to hear from a renal dietitian about what they can do, because maybe they don't know, and that's okay. I'm more than happy to take some time and educate them on how they can help you by referring you to a dietitian. So feel free to give my information out. I connect with doctors all the time, not just for my clients, but also in social media and just in many places as I can, as I'm trying to promote and encourage people to work with dietitians. Okay, so back to, I've got a couple more minutes here. Now we're at calcium. So calcium is another mineral, again, really tied closely to phosphorus, and it is the highest, it's the number one mineral that we have that's stored in our body. The majority of it is found in our bones. It's all stored in our bones. We do have calcium in our blood as well. So when you get your calcium checked on your renal function panel, it's going to be between 8.5 to 10.2, about that range. Now, calcium can be really tricky with kidney disease, and that it can go either way. It can go low or it can go high. And if it goes low, it's not necessarily that it might be a calcium supplement is the answer. It could be something about what's causing that low calcium. And I've had clients that have both low and both high. High is not good either, because then you're getting too much calcium in and the body doesn't have the capability of storing it. Your bank is full. So now it's too much in the blood, and that can be really problematic for that calcification as well. Having too much blood or having too much calcium, the calcium is going to pair up with that phosphorus and harden those arteries, those soft tissues, and make you itchy and all kinds of those problems that nobody wants to experience. So please, if your calcium levels are out of range, don't supplement with calcium. Don't take anything thinking that that's going to solve it. You really need to find out what's going on, why it's happening, and maybe it's going to be shifting some other medications or looking at other labs in your portal, looking at other labs with your doctor to find out what's causing that to happen. That's always the case. You got to find out why. Instead of just trying to patch it with a supplement, figure out what's causing it, because that is going to be where your answer is. Okay, next we have glucose. I said I would bring this up with you guys, and glucose is part of the renal function panel. This is the one where fasting is going to be important to know about. So if you're fasting, the glucose level will be around 70 to 100. That's the normal range. If you're not fasting, if you ate before your labs, it could be higher than 100, but they're usually looking for under 200 milligrams per deciliter for those blood test results. And that's where you want to let them know if you've been fasting or not, because if the number is a little bit higher, then that could be understandable. If you have blood sugar issues, if you have diabetes, your goals may be different. So you have your hemoglobin A1C, which is a quarterly or semi-annually test that you get checked to look at your how your blood sugars look in a big picture. But it's really important to understand what your goal should be, because if you try to drop it down to that fasting range too quick, even though it says, oh, this could be the good range, it might not be good for you. It might not feel good because it could be a huge shift. And our body does not like those drastic changes. It really doesn't. So speak with your doctor. This is another opportunity. If your levels are looking funky or if you're feeling funky, asking your doctor about seeing a dietitian, maybe that specializes in diabetes. If you take insulin, if you take other medications to help your sugars, there are dietitians that specialize in diabetes, and this could be an excellent opportunity to work with somebody that will help you related to your health and your labs. All right. Continuing on, we have those kidney function tests and calculations. So these are some other labs in the renal function panel that aren't necessarily from the draw themselves, but they're calculations based on some of those draws, some of the labs that you get. So the first one, of course, that you all are probably familiar with is the GFR, the glomerular filtration rate. Try to say that 10 times fast. So the GFR is an estimation, okay, you guys? It's an estimation of how much your kidneys are circulating, how much they're filtering for blood. So typically you might see on your labs either a level of at least 60 or at least 90. There is age-related expected kidney function decline. So recently on Instagram and Facebook for Plant Powered Kidneys, we shared the little graphic showing the different GFRs for different ages. So you can find us either on Instagram or on Facebook to get some more information there. But the GFR, just like any other lab, it's a snapshot. It is something to help you look at the bigger picture. It is not the single thing to be focusing on, even though a lot of times we look at that for our stages, we look at it for dialysis and transplant qualifications. It's not the whole picture, okay? So take a deep breath, look at everything else, look at the big picture, and talk with your healthcare team about your GFR to see if this is something that is normal and expected, or if it's funky. Again, your hydration level can alter what that level looks like. So it may be abnormal just because of your hydration level being off at the time of your blood draw. And next we have urea to creatinine ratio. This is, again, not itself a draw, part of the lab draw. This is a calculation comparing your blood urea nitrogen to your creatinine. They're looking at both of these waste products and they look at it as a ratio. The ratio is 6 to 22 is the typical range that it's looking at. This is another level that I often see changes because the urea, that blood urea nitrogen, tends to drop faster than the creatinine. When the creatinine is around 1 and the urea could be around 20, if that urea drops, but the creatinine stays the same, you could still have a huge swing in this ratio. But when you look at the ratio, I really recommend that you look at the BUN and the creatinine separately because this is a ratio of those two numbers. So look at both of those and talk with your doctor about this one as well. Next, we have anion gap, and I've had a lot of questions about this one lately too. So anion gap is actually a calculation of your electrolytes. It's looking kind of at this balance, similar to the UCR, the urea creatinine ratio. It's looking at sodium plus your potassium minus your chloride minus your bicarbonate. So the sodium and potassium are positive, and the chloride and bicarbonate are negative, and they're looking at that balance. So the reference range for the anion gap is between 8 and 16 generally. And again, because this is a calculation off of your other electrolytes, it's really important to look at those individual ones. So if you see a big change in your anion gap, look at your individual labs to see which one has had a bigger change that would result in a change in this calculation. So this gives a little bit more information, but it really kind of points you back to looking at those other labs to see what's going on there. Okay, I'm going to speed through a little bit more because I'm coming up towards the end, and as much as I could continue to talk a lot about this with you guys, got a lot going on today. It is a busy day. Okay. Okay, so Genga, it's the low phosphorus diet. Our website is plantpoweredkidneys.com, and you can go to plantpoweredkidneys.com/blog. You'll get a list of all of our articles, and you will see all of them from kidney disease to kidney stones, some about dialysis, some about fluid. We recently did one about how to talk with your kidney specialist, your nephrologist. So we have a ton, I think like over 50 articles that we have on there. We have a ton of articles, you guys. Every week we have a new article coming out, and we go through it here as much as possible. You're welcome. Okay. Next, I'm going to quickly review the difference between renal function panel and BMP. So first of all, BMP stands for basic metabolic panel. This checks some, not all, of what's in the renal function panel, what we just covered. So the things that the BMP does cover are your BUN, your creatinine. It still checks those. It checks your sodium. It checks your calcium, your potassium, bicarbonate, glucose, and chloride. It doesn't check your GFR. It doesn't check your albumin. You don't get your phosphorus, and you don't get your anion gap or your BUN creatinine ratio. So even though you don't get the BUN creatinine ratio, because you get BUN and creatinine, you could calculate yourself if you wanted to from there. And you don't get the anion gap, but you could calculate it yourself if you wanted to as well. It doesn't give you phosphorus though. Phosphorus is really related to kidney health. So that could be something that you could get individually ordered, just your phosphorus level to be checked, or the renal panel that would include the phosphorus level as well. So usually BMP is something more commonly ordered, like an annual checkup that someone would get a BMP if everything else has been looking good, there's no symptoms, no issues. Usually they'll start with a BMP or a CMP, which is a comprehensive metabolic panel, and that includes a few more labs as well. But I get questions about, well, wait a minute, I'm getting a BMP, and what's the difference? So I just wanted to kind of briefly go through those differences. And on the article that we have posted for the renal function panel, what we're talking about today, so at this link here, there is a graphic that I have that kind of shows line by line the comparison of the renal function panel versus the basic metabolic panel. Okay, you guys, I put this in here because I was like, I need this backup. I know we're probably going to end up running too close, which I am running close to the end. So let me see if I can answer any more questions. If I don't answer your question, it's either I didn't get time to answer it, or it's something that I cannot personally answer because you're asking a specific question about what's best for you. I don't know what's best for you because a dietitian. I'm a renal dietitian. I'm not your renal dietitian. And that's the difference. That's where you want to get a referral to a dietitian so that you can get those direct answers. Working privately, one-on-one, you'll get that individual attention, that individual assessment of your labs. That's really one of the biggest differences with working with in a course, working like in our 6-week program. We do talk about labs, but we don't do individual lab assessments because that is for private clients, and that goes into the legality of it. Really, it's not just like I don't want to. It's I'm not legally, ethically allowed to. So that's why I do have to kind of keep that boundary so that I can keep my license and I can keep being a dietitian. So hopefully y'all are good to go with that. So let me see. Okay. So Dawn had a question about mayo with canola oil or veganase. Honestly, I'm good with either one. Mayo is one of those things that it's fine to include as long as it's not like the big part of your diet. It's not a mayonnaise heavy diet. It's a condiment. So it's something to give some flavor, but it's not going to be a big factor in your day-to-day diet, in your labs, things like that. So either one I think is fine. It's really up to your preference and maybe some more details for yourself to look at, sometimes cost, availability, what tastes better, all those kind of things. So there's not a significant difference, but definitely check the label for added phosphorus. I believe last I checked, veganase was fine, but sometimes there are mayonnaise because they're shelf stable. Shelf stable means preservatives. Preservatives increases the chance that there's phosphorus added. So read the label to look for added phosphorus, and that will give you some great insight into if it's a better option or not. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I'm so happy I was able to quickly, I know I kind of blasted through a lot of this information. And again, if you want to read more about this, I've got the blog up. I'm more than happy for you to read through there, and you can post questions at the bottom of the article as well. So if you read through their article and you're thinking, something else pops up that you'd like to know more about, post it in the questions. And I do respond to all of the comments and questions on the blog. Very happy to answer that. And I think we're good. If you want to listen more about this topic, tonight, June 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern time, I will be having this conversation with James, which, as you know, if you watch us on Dadvice, that it can be a very different conversation we have. We go into different tangents, or we answer different questions from the audience there as well. So if you want to join us there live tonight, I will be doing this again. And thank you all. Thank you all for all the great comments. Really, really happy to be here and give you guys this information and answer your questions. And you all are the best, really. You guys are doing fantastic. You're keeping up with taking care of yourselves and learning. And I'm trying to get through all of the things and the nice comments here. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, your morning, your evening, wherever you're at, please enjoy it, make the most of it, be positive, and I will chat with y'all later. Have a wonderful rest of your day.